Kachalcky, the County of Westchester, which had a sustained New York proper call standard, holding that the requirement was substantially related to achievement of important governmental interests. In the view of understanding openness, your feed, Philip Falcone's Technology, 8 shares on the Hong Kong Exchange, Zautas Lizauer Jin, Dmitry Agavor, Boris Yeltsin, Penchkov Kaminsky, Dmitry Agavor, Boshan Un, Asser Yerafet, Amir Khan, Halpin Sato bin Laden, and the question in view of the state Dmitry Agavor and Malal Manishkov, based on questions where Mikhail Gorbachev is, and the view of the changes of application. If Wyjin was wondered as to Zautas Lai, satellite release in the USS Islamic Association, which was noted after Al-Padi v. the Republic of Sudan, identified in the questionable wonderment in Silpelo v. the Islamic Republic of Iran, 04. See the satellite of wonderment the first year based on the descent, and asked that in the view of Taiwan to the Chinese. Show the wonderment in view of Cuba at the time based on the U.S. standard and constitutional law theory. You are asking this the same time as Prince Charles, King Philip. You're showing this to Australia based on a model assessment, and say Barack is meeting with Vladimir Sergei Berlashkov, Kobe Kaminsky, Shavlak Kaminsky, or Sergei Larzov, Voroshev, Kobe Shalatsky, Shevnik, Khrushchev, Kavinsky is living. Now, this wouldn't be wonderment in the Butcher of Bosnia's trial, why Miss Ginsburg lives, or Saddam's trial and application. If you were going to ask this in Ashcroft v. Iaqua, this would show the Bree software language as an open exploratory question, the same way as the Boston Marathon bombing and the view of the phone call. Now, if this was wondered when Kenya and Tanzania, my name is said by the bombers during the time and it is shown in the trial, this wouldn't be the owned through the Republic of Sudan, the one right after. You would show that this is the question in the Super Bowl 98, the same time as the question. And punitive damages to Good Morning America based on home visit to the great-granddad. Now, if this is wondered to view of Barbosa, what is Dad's wonderment with Wyjin and Shinhua Lin? Now, if you have specific questions in view of the Chinese, Iran, the satellite signal, based on Philip Falcone's technology, based on theoretical underlying, that wouldn't be the wonderment of capital finance wonderment in view of Trump v. the Trump University v. the U.S. based on debt financing.
Visit hillspet.com/iHeart.
No, that's wondered the bond holding. That's the equivalent of what?
If you know how to get the vote.
That in municipal application, that wouldn't be Fernando via the U.S. based on credit REITs, and show that in the land, which was wondered in DJT Incorporated via. But would that be the challenges in Alexander v. the Americans United, suit seeking injunctive relief based on Bob Jones against attack falls squarely within the literal scope of the act. The literal scope of the act would be the valuation of oneself based on California v. and Trump v. the Hawaii. Now, if we're asking these questions compared to, can we hear Korean? Can we hear Russian? What about Arabic, Mr. Vandals? I say that word to your son, you can. What happens if you can show Ivana saying hello to you? What about that's the Korean broadcast and say a caliphate or a nuclear bomb, and say the Nixon in view of Patty? Show that as the Lebanon bomb after Camellia went abroad. Show that as the requestment to hold the United States at gunpoint, Barton v. Barr. Show that as military rank given in the Chinese and citizenship of lieutenant colonel. And ask that as a 2-star, or can you live with Bernard's nephew in the Russian Federation? See that as day-to-day management. If there are questions, an oral argument based on family application, that'd be Blavey there. Now, the principal favor CC, I hear, would that be asking the Chinese government and the Russian government, Barbosa at the time of Executive Order 17317, 12608, and 126313 and SB 901, if Tijuana and Barbosa could become its own country compared to Washington, D.C., Samoa Island, Guam, in model assessment. Now, in FCC v. McConnell, it's been 58 years since we've taken a vote for statehood. That's not a Durban question in delegation. Now, if you were to ask that the LLNV NYC be the Brooklyn Naval Recording and you can show 7 prime ministers as well as your siblings, what about congratulations? That tape has only been available for 11 months under Navy v. the U.S. Now, the government worries that the ruling in CIC will enable the Anti-Injunction Act. Is the Anti-Injunction Act asking questions about partisan ideology? The September election and the earliest he could be nominated for the following. The brief of the respondent is 32 and 38. Regulatory demands, including objections. If in Ashcroft v. Iaqua, we're asking the impeachment of the vice president in 11. Show the interaction of James Michael Pence pre and post it. No, any emails, any turning on the radio, or any phone calls to him. A question of dispute over taxes, military procedure instead. A 925F3D based on Supra at 5. By contrast, the kind of case the government looks at making of floodgates, the uses of atomic nuclear weapons, in view of compact deals. Show the floodgates being the invasion, war game simulations in geographical area. Is a conflict over taxes, positional symmetry. Show that the satellite in outer space would be the same equivalent as a state or country. Association of municipality. Now, if selling stock, that wouldn't be the argument of what time of the day. Earning income wouldn't be who's the trustee and the grantor. And DJT Incorporated or Truck v. Vance. Would my sister have that right? And my Bree software be blind trust? And that's what stocks I'm thinking about. Now, if that was wondered in Bob Jones, Zelensky v. the United States, every tax is in some measure regulatory. It's good to get a chubby from listening to your uncle say your name while sleeping. Oh, Loper, your husband's NASDAQ CEO, and the other nephew sits on that board. And you're going to ask that in view of K&L. And say, James Thune, Preston. Now, if Bailey v. George is in the question of the anti-court, U.S. 16, 1922, held that the act barred a pre-enforcement suit challenging a tax intended to discourage the then lawful use of child labor. If I can prove the president's, former president's wife saying hello to me, as well as him, as well as 4 out of the 7 prime ministers and slow-mo models and dispatch, is that an issue as a child against the state? And Boyd v. Thayer or Bob Jones, Barr v. Barton? Would that be the wonderment of asking what a Preston pegging is? In the view of 416 USC 735, 416 USC, in doing so, the court made clear that the plaintiff's reason for suing did not matter. Would that be Opati or Owens v. Sudan? And asked that as the confirmation of John Roberts. What would be that wonderment in open radio at the time after the 38 Negro passed away? It was, for example, irrelevant that Bob Jones University objected to the IRS attempt. At the time of this ruling, this was Trump University. 416 USC 739. This wouldn't be the debt wonderment and say that my computer or Trump University for my hotel is like asking my security value around golf courses or buying up Phoenix University. Trump University didn't have a clause in that in view of model. Now we have these same questions. The Tax Liability Code of Conduct. Thank you very much.
Hey, was it slow right here at the break?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, sir. Sorry. That's real. Show organic course line and ask the candidates. And can you go public on the Spanish and the U.S. Dairy Association be the U.S. And Alexander v. Americans United and Bob Jones v. Simon, that's the property loan, Bob Jones University instead of Trump. This would be like asking that to the debt loan forgiveness. In the wake of the court decision, Americans United, shouldn't it be Trump Pence v. Citizen United if that was the military experience? If I can show James Michael not having any phone call, if I can show the defense secretary no email, no turning on the thing, if I can show an executive order requesting that there is no secretary or ambassador, if I can show that this is a question in view of using to Israel in view of the election, firing at rare earth metals and nuclear power plants based on the time of the changes, and in view of climate change. Now, if we were going to ask questions in model assessment, as Alexander, compare a brief respondent to Alexander v. Americans United. It is clear purpose of this lawsuit is not to restrain the assessment or collection of any tax, but to challenge the constitutionality of an essentially regulatory act of Congress. Would this be the executive orders? Would this be Ted Lieu and say, hey, I guess, excuse me, James Carter, I'm supposed to ask it like the President Pence as the illegal immigrant and being respect that the concubine, excuse me, isn't capable of being the vice president compared to the wife? What about if that's wondered to Ms. Barrett in view of partisan ideology of the Green Party? In view of the state, the brief of the petitioner 17, the purpose of the CIC is to avoid, can't ask this to Marilyn Garland, Rudy Giuliani, Carol Barrett, Mark Milley with her as a partnership. What about Ted Lieu in view of the secretary request and the ranking member? Show why the assassination request of the chairwoman of the Ways and Means. Country application shows the compliance procedure of 7421A, contrary to some sweeping language, is best to read a discreet editing. Courts look at the stated object of a suit rather than the suit's downstream effects. The military procedural wonderment between country based on partisan ideology and how it affects. Pre-enforcement suits challenging a regulation backed by tax penalty. The tax penalty would not be ICBM nuclear bomb request based on ADA, the Health Care Act. The sinking of a USS destroyer, a request by the South Korean government based on 2 weeks ago that if the 45th president steps foot on the peninsula, an assassination request may proceed because of a requested relief runs against an independent legal obligation, the country's viewpoint. Now, this was wondered as a model assessment. Would we have these questions based on Ashcroft v. Iroquois? If I can show Donald saying hello to Bo Shanoon and Sung Il in view of asking for an ICBM nuclear bomb use. Show this in view of the September election and the soonest you can declare party obligations. This wouldn't be an appropriate request, and Bailey v. George as act of pre-enforcement challenging attacks intended to discourage the lawful use of child labor. The labor is the effectment of a national draft. What happens if this was wondered in Border Patrol? What happens if this is a volunteer militia? What happens if this is wondered based on the military movement of the foreign power and water application? Based on this application, these wouldn't be the questions in UN Order 71269 and UN Order 2826 and UN Order 3032 based on compliable procedures going into the new year. Based on wonderment already, these wouldn't be the compliant wonderments of the uses of an atomic weapon in view of the NEA-IEA Act. Now, if you can show that these are questionable model assessments, the review of certiorari is not the request to the foreign power based on the Defense Act as an acting agent of terror. If you are to act in blind terror, would the confirmation of that person be seen as blind terror based on FCC v. the United States or McConnell v. the U.S.? If this was wonderment that the Senate will never take a vote for a new state based on the national debt pre-60 to 50-50, that wouldn't be the wonderment in view of compliant wonderment in Barton v. Barr, or the question of the U.S. or the U.S. Department of Homeland Security v. the United States, or the President of the United States v. the NAACP, the question that was asked at the time of reflection. In view of Wolfie, Acting Secretary of Homeland Security versus Vital, please show the United States at gunpoint where the Breshkov and the radon field, the 26 atmospheric bombers, the 2 submarines 9 miles outside of Washington, D.C. with isothermal nuclear reading, the Admiral Kreshkov less than a day outside of American waters in Florida, the 279 Chinese shipping vessels in Brazil, 538 submarines of the Russian Federation outside of Ireland.